This is Ireland, and this is a map of Ireland's population density in 1841. Then, this is it in 1936. Then, this was it in 2002. So, how did Ireland's population drastically decrease over the space of 160 years? Well, let's talk about it. Please consider subscribing if you enjoy this video. Ireland is an island settled off the west coast of the United Kingdom, one of Europe's most westernly points. It is Europe's third largest island behind the United Kingdom and Iceland, and the 20th largest island in the world. The island is split into two different countries, one being Northern Ireland at the, north. Northern Ireland is one of the four constituent countries of the United Kingdom, and we have the Republic of Ireland on the south of the island. Northern Ireland was originally created on the 3rd of May 1921, but for the purpose of this video being about the history over the last 200 years, we'll speak about Ireland and Northern Ireland as a whole in the video. Ireland's geography is described as lush green landscapes, rolling hills, rugged coastlines, full of numerous lakes and rivers, making it a very picturesque and a diverse land. It's often referred to as the Emerald Isle because of how green the countryside is. Over the last few centuries, we've seen a great fluctuation in Ireland's population. A population graph of Ireland merely resembles a very scary roller coaster. But what's caused this? Well, let's get into it. Ireland's population in the early 12th to 16th century fluctuated between 1 to 2 million. But during the Cromwellian War, which was a conquest of Ireland by the English forces led by Oliver Cromwell, it saw Ireland face around 600,000 deaths out of their population of 1.5 million before the war, a loss of around 41% of the population, and represents one of the greatest loss of lives amongst European history. By May 1652, Cromwell's army had defeated the Confederate and Royalist coalition in Ireland and occupied the country, ending the war. As a result of the war and its aftermath, many Irish Catholics, particularly those who lost land or faced discrimination, emigrated to the American colonies, especially to places like Pennsylvania and Maryland. This contributed to the Irish diaspora in North America. After the war, Ireland continued to repopulate and over the next 100 years would see their population rise to around 2.5 million. And that's when, in 1740, disaster struck, the Irish Famine, also known as Bliain an Air, meaning the year of slaughter, happened. This famine was estimated to have killed between 10 to 20% of the population. The famine lasted from 1740 to 1741 and was due to extremely cold, then dry weather, resulting in food losses of grain harvests, milk, and damage to potatoes. This happened mostly across Europe and was said to be the last of seriously cold periods at the end of the Little Ice Age. The Little Ice Age was a climate interval that happened between the 14th to 19th century, which resulted in many cold temperatures that were so cold that it would lead to places like the Baltic Sea and the River Thames completely freezing over. But this cold period hit Ireland extremely hard due to it completely destroying their way of life and survival. Temperature records from this time were hard to find, but due to the mercury thermometer being invented 25 years prior by Dutch physicist Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit, people found some personal records that have survived that stated indoor temperatures were said to be as cold as minus 12 degrees Celsius, while outdoor temperatures were said to be minus 18 degrees Celsius during this time. This made it impossible for the Irish to grow two of their main staples of their diets, oats and potatoes. These were all staple diets of the Irish people. What followed next was death from mass starvation, compounded by an outburst of fatal diseases. In June 1741, 5 vessels loaded with grain reached Galway, and by July 1741, prices of grain were back to normal and wheat flooded the market. The food crisis was over, and Ireland has returned somewhat back to normal. Ireland then experienced rapid population growth, going from less than 3 million people all the way to 8 million in 1841, over a 250% increase. Then, what happened next was a catastrophe, and one, if not the biggest disaster of Ireland's history. The Great Famine, also known as the Irish Potato Famine, was a catastrophic event that unfolded in the mid-19th century, forever altering the course of Irish history. To understand the famine, we must first understand that in the early 1800s, Ireland was an agricultural society, heavily reliant on a single crop, the potato. The difference from the famine of 1740 from the Great Famine was that the potato became far more important in the lifestyle of the Irish and became an even bigger staple than before in the Irish diet. The reason why the Irish were so reliant on potatoes was because although they grew oats, barley and meat during the famine, they were systematically exported to Great Britain. The Irish population's heavy reliance on cheap potatoes was a consequence of both general poverty under British rule and the lack of time and resources for diversifying their agricultural practices. The potato dependency was artificially imposed due to the demands of colonial rule. Even as the Irish were suffering from starvation, food was consistently taken from the island. The potato became the lifeline for millions of Irish families. It was hardy, nutritious, and could yield abundant crops in Ireland's fertile soil. For many, it was the source of life in Ireland. But in 1845, disaster struck. A potato blight caused by the fungus Phytophthora infestans ravaged the potato crops. The leaves withered, the tubers rotted, and the staple food of Ireland turned black. As the blight spread, devastation followed. Crop after crop failed, leading to widespread food shortages and hunger. The Irish population was facing an unimaginable catastrophe. The impact on the Irish people was heart-wrenching. Families watched helplessly as loved ones starved. Malnutrition and disease swept through communities. Desperation was palpable. Efforts were made to provide relief. Soup kitchens and aid distribution centers were established. However, the relief was often inadequate and the suffering persisted. The Great Famine exacted a devastating toll. While the exact number of deaths remains a subject of historical debate, it is believed that approximately 1 million Irish people, equivalent to 12% of the population, died during this dark period. The suffering and death of so many during the Great Famine contributed to a growing sense of national identity and solidarity among the Irish people. It fueled demands for political change and ultimately played a role in Ireland's quest for independence from British rule. Despite the immense suffering, the Irish people displayed remarkable resilience. Their cultural heritage endured and even thrived in the face of adversity. Irish traditions, music, and dance continued to be a source of pride and identity both at home and within the Irish diaspora. The Great Famine of Ireland serves as a stark reminder of the enduring human spirit in the face of unimaginable suffering. Ireland saw great help from all over the world. During the famine, the Ottoman Sultan donated £1,000 to famine relief, equivalent to between $80,000 to $200,000 today. The Ottoman Sultan also dispatched 3 ships carrying wheat as aid. The British authorities blocked their access to the ports, but one of the vessels successfully delivered its cargo to a shoreline near Drogheda, providing much-needed sustenance to starving local fishermen. Who else helped Ireland in this time of need was the Choctaw Nation, one of the indigenous nations in what is now the southeastern United States, raised a remarkable sum of $170, equivalent to several $1,000s today, and sent it to Ireland to provide famine relief. This compassionate gesture from a people who had faced their own struggles resonated deeply with the Irish population and left a lasting impression. To this day, the bond between the Irish and the Choctaw Nation is remembered and celebrated, and it serves as a symbol of the enduring human capacity for empathy and generosity in times of crisis. One inspiring story from the Great Famine of Ireland is that of Father Theobald Matthew, an Irish Catholic priest who became known as the Apostle of Temperance for his efforts to combat the widespread problem of alcoholism during the famine. Father Theobald Matthew was born in 1790 in County Tipperary, Ireland. He grew up in a country where alcohol consumption was deeply ingrained in the culture and excessive drinking was a significant social issue. However, as the Great Famine struck in the mid-19th century, the situation became even more dire. Many Irish people turned to alcohol as their way to escape the harsh reality of the famine, exacerbating the social problems associated with alcoholism. In 1838, Father Matthew launched a movement known as the Pledge of Total Abstinence. He encouraged people to take a solemn oath to abstain from all alcoholic beverages. His goal was to combat the destructive effects of alcoholism on individuals and families, and to promote temperance as a way to improve social conditions. Father Matthew's movement gained immense popularity, especially during the Great Famine when alcoholism was rampant. He traveled throughout Ireland, often in difficult circumstances, to administer the pledge to thousands of people. He held mass gatherings known known as monster meetings, where people would publicly take the pledge. These meetings attracted tens of thousands of participants, and it's estimated that millions of Irish people eventually took the pledge. Father Matthew's efforts had a profound impact on Irish history. By promoting temperance, he not only addressed the immediate issue of alcoholism, but also provided a message of hope and self-improvement during a time of immense suffering. His movement helped to improve the physical and moral well-being of countless individuals and families. Father Theobald Matthew's legacy endures in Ireland, where he is remembered as a compassionate and forward-thinking priest who provided solace and inspiration during one of the darkest periods in Irish history. Ireland's population of 8 million has never been reached since 1840. Northern Ireland and Ireland's population today is around 7 million together, which is still 1 million off their peak almost 200 years prior. The reasons due to that is not only the potato famine, which of course caused a great impact, but also due to the emigration that occurred. Facing insurmountable hardship, many Irish people saw emigration as their only chance for survival. Over 1 million souls fled Ireland seeking refuge across the Atlantic. The majority went to North America, with Canada and the United States being the primary destinations. Even decades after the famine, we saw plenty of individuals and families who fled to other countries as an escape. Even though Ireland had returned back to normal, a lot of families didn't want to live in fear of facing that hardship ever again. While emigration provided a lifeline for many and allowed them to build new lives abroad, it also contributed to Ireland's slower population growth. Whilst there was also improvements in public health infrastructure, Ireland continued to face public health challenges in the post-famine period. Diseases and poor living conditions in overcrowded areas could have a negative impact on population growth. Ireland's lack of population has resulted in a lot of vacant homes. Ireland has the 10th highest rate of vacant homes in the world, with over 183,000 homes classified as vacant, with around 40,000 plus of them being vacant for over 6 years. Although there are several factors contributing to this other than lack of population. Ireland experienced a housing bubble in the mid-2000s, which led to an oversupply of homes. During this period, there was a construction boom, with many new houses and apartment complexes being built. When the bubble burst, it left a surplus of vacant properties. Ireland has a tradition of owning vacation homes, especially in rural and coastal areas. Many of these properties remain vacant for a significant portion of the year and are used only during holidays or the summer months. Just like they have for several hundred years, Ireland experienced significant emigration during the economic downturn, with many young people leaving the country in search of better job opportunities abroad. America technically have a bigger Irish population than Ireland, with 34 million of them claiming to be fully or partially Irish. Ireland also went from having a population that is spaced out back in the 1800s to today having densely populated areas, while some areas look like they've been completely abandoned. During the 19th and 20th centuries, Ireland experienced industrialization and urbanization, particularly in its cities and towns. This led to the growth of urban centers as industrial jobs and economic opportunities attracted people from rural areas. Ireland seemed a dramatic shift from agricultural-based jobs to industrial-based jobs, leading people away from the countryside and into the city. Ireland's story is certainly an interesting one, a mixture of disasters that would wreck the country as well as just general evolution of modern-day countries. And maybe one day we'll see Ireland's population thrive to that 8 million mark once again. If you liked this video, maybe you'll like this video on why 94% of Scotland's land is empty. Click here to watch. See you guys over on that video.